Belshazzar was the last ruler of Babylon before its sudden and catastrophic fall. Though he is often referred to as a king, he was actually a co-regent, ruling in place of his father, King Nabonidus. Nabonidus had left Babylon to live in the Arabian desert for religious and political reasons, leaving Belshazzar in charge of the empire. However, unlike his famous predecessor Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar was reckless, arrogant, and blind to the warnings of history. His reign ended in a single night, marking the end of the once mighty Babylonian Empire. One evening, while the powerful Persian army was already surrounding Babylon, Belshazzar hosted a lavish feast for 1,000 of his nobles. The timing of this banquet showed his overconfidence. Despite the enemy at his gates, he believed that Babylon's walls were impenetrable and its resources limitless. The city had massive fortifications, thick double walls, and an abundant water supply from the Euphrates River that flowed through it. The king saw no reason to be concerned. As the banquet continued, Belshazzar, already intoxicated with wine, made a shocking decision. He ordered that the sacred gold and silver vessels taken from the temple of the God of Israel in Jerusalem be brought in so that he and his guests could drink from them. These vessels were holy, consecrated for worship in God's temple, but Belshazzar treated them with disrespect, using them in his drunken revelry. As he and his nobles, wives, and concubines drank from them, they praised the false gods of Babylon, gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. This act was not only an offense against Israel's God, but a display of extreme arrogance. It was as if Belshazzar was mocking the God of Israel, showing that Babylon was supreme and untouchable. But in that moment, something terrifying happened. As the celebration continued, a ghostly hand appeared out of nowhere and began writing on the plaster wall of the royal palace. The hand moved silently, inscribing strange words that no one could understand. The sight of the disembodied hand filled Belshazzar with horror. The once boastful king turned pale, his body trembled, and his knees knocked together in fear. In desperation, he called for the enchanters, astrologers, and wise men of Babylon, offering them great rewards if they could interpret the writing. He promised that whoever deciphered the message would be clothed in purple, given a gold chain, and made the third highest ruler in the kingdom, since he himself was second under Nabonidus. However, none of the so-called wise men could understand the writing, leaving the king even more distressed. At this moment, the queen mother, likely the widow of Nebuchadnezzar, entered the hall. Seeing the panic on Belshazzar's face, she reminded him of a man who had once served under Nebuchadnezzar, a man named Daniel. She described Daniel as someone filled with divine wisdom, able to interpret dreams and explain mysteries. If anyone could read the writing, it was him. Daniel, now an old man, was summoned to the king's presence. Belshazzar offered him the same rewards he had promised his wise men, but Daniel refused. He had no interest in the king's gifts. However, he agreed to interpret the writing, but first he delivered a sharp rebuke to Belshazzar. Daniel reminded Belshazzar of what had happened to Nebuchadnezzar, the greatest king Babylon had ever known. Nebuchadnezzar had been powerful and prosperous, but when his heart became arrogant, God humbled him. He was driven from his throne, made to live like a wild animal, eating grass like an ox, until he finally acknowledged that God alone rules over the kingdoms of men. But unlike Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar had learned nothing. Instead of humbling himself before God, he had openly defied him by desecrating the sacred temple vessels and worshipping lifeless idols. Because of this, God had sent the mysterious message written on the wall. Daniel then read the words aloud, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Then he explained their meaning. God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Babylon's time was up. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Belshazzar had been judged by God and found unworthy. Parsin or Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The Babylonian Empire was about to fall. Daniel's words were not just a prophecy, they were an announcement. The judgment was immediate, and there was no chance for repentance. Despite the dire warning, Belshazzar kept his word and rewarded Daniel, dressing him in royal purple and declaring him the third ruler in the kingdom. But the reward was meaningless because that very night Babylon fell. The Persian army, under King Cyrus and his general Gobryas, had already found a way to enter the city. The Euphrates River, which flowed through Babylon, had been secretly diverted, lowering the water level enough for Persian soldiers to march under the city's massive walls through the riverbed. The gates along the river, which were usually kept locked, had been carelessly left open. Without a battle, the Persians stormed the palace and killed Belshazzar. By morning, Babylon, the greatest empire of its time, was no more. The kingdom passed into the hands of the Medes and Persians, just as Daniel had prophesied. Belshazzar's story is a powerful lesson about arrogance, disrespect for God, and the certainty of divine judgment. He had every opportunity to learn from Nebuchadnezzar's mistakes, but he chose to ignore them. His defiance, reckless behavior, and blasphemy led to his downfall. The writing was on the wall, both literally and figuratively, but he refused to see it until it was too late. His life is a reminder that no kingdom, no ruler, and no person is beyond the reach of God's judgment. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who dishonor God will face the consequences.